Welcome everyone to the February OpenNTF webinar, February 2025. We are going to have some fun today with the Notes client and have a couple of folks with us that are going to show us some crazy innovative things that they've done with the Notes client. I'll just jump into the agenda quickly. So a quick welcome, and then we have Bernd Gewehr and Leonardo Malzacher. I will apologize for brutal pronunciation, but they are our presenters today. And once their presentation is done, as we always do, we'll have our Q&A section at the end. Just a couple of quick introductory comments. Of course, OpenNTF is sponsored to help us put on these types of events, and we say thank you to HCL for their contributions, and Prominic, of course, donates IT-related services. We thank them both for their contributions. And just as we always do, a quick note about community. You know, there's interesting commentary floating around from time to time about who OpenNTF is and what OpenNTF does. And as a board member for a long time now, there's sometimes a sense that OpenNTF is the people that are on the board. And it's important to clarify, at least from my perspective, that the board are volunteers just like everybody else, and really we're the caretakers of the community, if you will. We're not the people that do the OpenNTF stuff, although we do a lot of stuff. But it's everybody, right? Everybody in this community, we're all part of OpenNTF. We're all in a position to be able to learn from each other and share what we know. And today's presentation is a great example of that. So if you've got some ideas or got some questions, please jump in and ask and share what you know, and we'll learn from each other. A couple of quick upcoming events. Next week, this time, will be our second open mic with HCL development team. This time around, we're talking Nomad Web and Nomad Mobile. And if you go to the openntf.org/webinars page, you can get all the details on what's going on there and be able to sign up for it. And if you have a question that you'd like to share in advance, we've got an email address set up. It's openmic@openntf.org. Send your questions in advance and give the developers a chance to dig into the geeky details of what your questions are so that they can give you good answers when they get into the session, and that's next week. In March, in our normal third week Thursday time slot, we're going to have another webinar. In this particular case, I think we're doing the new HCL developers community, and Paul Withers is going to come back and make that presentation. As soon as we get that confirmed, we'll have the details posted up. And then we'll obviously have another open mic the week following that. And just a quick advance warning that Engage User Group in The Hague is coming up in May, and they're accepting abstracts for presentations now. So if you'd like to make a presentation, by all means, check out engage.ug and get the details there. The OpenNTF community, we're hosted on Discord, so if you're not there yet, that's the place to chime in and participate in the forums and ask your questions. Again, share what you know. These are the links on how to get there. And with this presentation, we'll take questions that our presenters will ask or answer after the presentation is over. Use the questions panel in the GoTo interface. Yes, this is being recorded. Yes, it's going to be posted on YouTube. I'll edit the video later today or tomorrow. And really what we want to do is focus the questions on the presentation topic. So if you've got something that's off topic, that's where Discord is used for. And with that, I will hand it over to Bernd for the start of the presentation.
Oh, hello, everybody. Welcome to this webinar. We are guests too here, and we are lucky to be here to show something that we have worked on in the last months. We call this Do Crazy Innovative Things in the Notes client because what we have done here was seen as impossible for a very long time, and we did it anyway. And that's the reason why we wanted to speak about it. Still, Leonardo and I are working for Vössing, which is a civil engineering company founded and based in Düsseldorf, Germany, but working in several countries in the world to plan and supervise traffic construction work like bridges, tunnels, railways, railway stations, and stuff. And so engineers are the ones with the white helmet. That's why the person there has one of the white helmets on. But many of our work happens in the office, or as you see here in the meeting rooms, looking together how a building, a railway, traffic, a highway, something like that, could be built best. So that's also in my openings. I guess it's quite sure that one of you or everybody of you might have one of our products already used. And so welcome to this session. Well, to start with a simple introduction, it's pretty important to know whom you're speaking to. So I'm Bernd Gewehr, head of IT department at Vössing for a very, very long time. I started my career here in 1997. And so I really know this company well, that's for sure. And for some time now, Leonardo is working with me as a software developer, and he will take over the more in-depth parts of the presentation. Lucky to be HCL Ambassador also for 2025. I have this now in a row from IBM and HCL from 2018 starting, so it's my 7th year. I'm proud and lucky to be part of that group. Good. So what we did and what we dreamt for a long time is we built a Zoom presence sidebar. So why did we? That's my part of the presentation. So the Zoom presence sidebar should be something that keeps people satisfied who enjoyed the same time experience of having an integrated sidebar that allows them to track presence of people and just click and chat or even click and call people to easily communicate with each other. And our decisions led us to focus on Watson Workspace, if you remember that beautiful thing. And we got to learn Zoom as part of Watson Workspace back then. And after Watson Workspace was killed by IBM, we decided to go for Zoom all in. And so what we have now is Zoom is the one and only, not the only, we have also Teams, but Zoom is the standard communicative chat, video meeting, and phone solution at Vössing. So what we wanted to achieve is if we lose Sametime at some day, which is probably close, then couldn't we keep the experience of having a sidebar in the Notes client that allows me to track the Zoom presence of people and to easily communicate still, although now having switched to Zoom. And I think some of the community will remember that I have been going around to ask, isn't there somebody having experience in creating sidebar apps for the Notes client, allowing us to build a new Zoom presence sidebar? And I did this for a few years on conferences and stuff. And the answer was always, no, it's impossible. It is not possible to build rich experiences for the current Notes sidebar. Well, and then we still thought about it. And yeah, we came to writing down what it should be. It should be a replacement for the same time presence status sidebar in the Notes client. We would love to see the same experience that we had with Same Time and that was enjoyed by people for having it integrated into the Notes client. And we wanted to create it, although it's impossible, and also add data integration from other systems. So it could be Teams as well. So you could have a multi-presence information. But what we added first is the information whether or not somebody is in holidays or absent or working remotely or in the office. So these things were available as data points from other systems, preferable Domino apps, but those were available. And so we asked whether or not we could make it to combine the Zoom presence with this presence information and to offer it as a rich experience within the Notes client as a sidebar. And yeah, although being impossible, Leonardo found a way to do it. So Leonardo, would you show the audience how you did it?
Sure thing. So we will basically gatekeep you for a little bit until you see the final product. So we start with talking about basically the technical challenges we have or we had encountered. So the first thing is, so we knew we could like basically display an X page into the sidebar. So however, if you try to display any web page or an X page in the Notes client, Notes uses something called XULrunner, which is basically Mozilla 5.0. And you might think, hey, this doesn't 5.0, it's maybe not that bad, but it turns out it's 2011 bad. And if you know web development, it's pretty old. So basically, the most things won't work because modern JavaScript, CSS, and especially browser APIs that are now standardized are not supported. So the result of this all is if you try to basically display basically most of today's websites, they can't be displayed. So either they will glitch out due to CSS, or most likely they will just crash because the JavaScript is incompatible. Also, if you would try to basically, so we know, hey, you can develop an X page, and most of you guys maybe say, hey, I know how to do it. There are some difficulties because you would have to basically comply with early JavaScript ES5 standards and like also old CSS standards. And writing really old JavaScript is especially challenging. So also the developer convenience would be pretty hard. And also another like bigger like problem or a thing I don't know is how do we do like real-time data retrieval in an X page? So these were like the main issues we had or the technical challenges we have to overcome to actually like fulfill our project. Right. So what was the solution? So personally, I know how to write React. If you don't know what React is basically a front-end framework that like is from Facebook. There are like other competitors from Google. It's called Angular, and there's like some newer stuff like Vue.js, which is basically a framework which allows you to build applications or web applications component-based. So you can reuse components. You can basically use components from other people and so it's basically makes everything a bit more standardized and easier to basically develop big or large scale web applications. So I knew how to write React, and I was like, could I get a React app working inside of the sidebar of Notes? And then I was like, let's try it. So I took an X page, I took an iframe, and I basically tried to get a React app working. So basically a very basic React app, which didn't work. Why did it not work? Because the JavaScript issues. So the XULrunner, Mozilla 5.0, just doesn't work. So the JavaScript will just crash because it doesn't know a lot of browser APIs, and like it just doesn't work. So, but I found a way because I was like Googling, so how can I make like a modern React app? How can I make it basically legacy? So I found a way because Vite is like the standardized build tool for React single page applications. And I found a plugin which is called like the Vite.js plugin legacy, which can basically transpile modern JavaScript to older standards. So you can write modern code, you can like write code in today's standards, you can use const, let, and like async await and such. And this plugin will like magically turn this code into like older browser compatible code. And it will also do polyfills for you. So you might ask yourself, what are polyfills? This is basically just a bunch of code that enables you to use more modern code. So it like emulates more modern features. So basically, it's like a combination of both words, like transpiling and like polyfilling. At the right bottom, you can see like the config.js. Normally, you just have like the plugins, and then in the array you have the React plugin to basically compile a React application. And with the legacy plugin, you can basically specify a target. And the only target that worked inside, so that the React app works in XULrunner, was that. So we tried everything else, but that was like the last resort. And with that added, it compiled basically to a standard which the XULrunner actually could display. However, if you need like additional polyfills and such, it will do it automatically based on like the browser target, but you could also add another or other polyfills if needed, but you have to like kind of fiddle around. Also, our solution basically for the real-time communication issues or challenges, we saw, luckily we could use like a very, very modern WebSocket library called Socket.io, which is basically also industry standard. And yeah, very lucky for us.
Well, Leonardo, did you just say that it was possible to build a modern app as a modern app developer without thinking about where it should run later and then just transpile it into the older language?
Yeah, basically. I mean, you have some kind of limitations we will look at later, but basically, yeah.
And did you also say that this web app that then runs in the XULrunner also is capable of doing WebSockets to real-time updates from a server?
Yeah, I guess I said that there.
Man, that's a great achievement.
Yeah, I know. I was also proud of it because it was a big relief. As if this wouldn't work, I would basically have to write an X page like I described beforehand, and this would be pretty painful, I guess. So this brings us basically to our final architecture. The diagram at the bottom looks a bit wild, but I'll go through it. So basically, as I already said, in the front end, we have a React single page application running inside an X page via an iframe. And that X page is inside the Notes client sidebar. So if you look at the picture at the right side, so we have the Notes client sidebar where we add an X page, and that X page basically just contains an iframe. And this iframe basically just points to our React frontend, which we hosted like on our Docker services. So how does everything work? So to get the status updates from Zoom, you can like create a Zoom app in the, I don't know how's it called, like if you're a manager for the Zoom accounts, you can create an app and you can say, hey, if my employee status changes, please send this information to the following URL, which does point to our backend, which is basically a Node.js service, which is a JavaScript backend. And we take this data, we enrich it. So we take some data from Domino, so we can say, or we know personally if the employee is like in the office, is he working remotely, or is he like on vacation or not available for some other reason. So we basically enrich all this data. And most of the data runs in memory, but we also have like a presence data cache or backup in a Postgres database, but doesn't matter for now. So we basically just gather all the data, and the backend does two things. It once serves the frontend application, and it also like establishes a WebSocket connection. So we have like a pops up schema. So the frontend receives all updates like instantaneous due to like the WebSocket communication. So we have no polling or such. It's real time and real good, as I would say.
So did you say this worked for 800 employees without issues?
Yeah, basically. All right. So one more thing to notice. If you need to, you can also make a data flow happening between your X page and basically your embedded web app. This is the thing. Most of web developers know this. You can do this with iframes. So if you have like your child app and your parent app, if you're in the child, so if you look at the bottom left, we have the web app. If you're in the web app via JavaScript, you can basically call window.parent.postMessage. The message can be everything. It can be a JSON object. It can be a string. It can be basically everything. Like JavaScript, you can do funny stuff. You can also send a function up to your parent. You can do basically everything. And you can also go the other way around. So if you like get the iframe, you can do like content window. So it does differ a bit. For the child, it's parent, and for the parent, it's content window. And you can also leverage like post message, and then send your message you want to or the data you want to. Why did we use it? So you see at the right side, in the middle, you see like, or you have to know first, our app only is accessible from our internet. So if one of our employees works from home or somewhere else, when he would open like the Notes client, it would like load, and he would get like, hey, error 404 cannot reach this page. And we wanted like to enhance this experience. We would like have like a custom error message. And we did realize this with like this architecture. And like at the bottom right, you can see like, how do you do such a message listener? So how do you listen actually for these post messages? You just have to do like window.add-event listener. Then you need to listen to the message event, and with the event you can do some security checks. So if the origin matches where the event is coming from, and then you can like do whatever you want with it.
Well, that looks like that you could also use this for requesting data from Domino to use it inside of your web app, if you like.
Basically, if you want, you can do complete data transmission or anything else. Right now, for the final gatekeep, I think, are the limitations we encountered. So we said you can basically use React, so pretty modern development environment. However, the thing is, you see at the right side at the top, not every modern JS or CSS feature can be transpiled or polyfilled. This is a big issue. So you cannot always emulate like newer JavaScript or especially browser APIs that are mostly needed or used in like many modern React component libraries like Mantine and such. So these mostly don't work. Maybe you can get it working when you like play around with additional polyfills and such, but I didn't try to fiddle around with it anymore because I think I was already like mentally insane at that point. And yeah, so basically we encountered some CSS issues. If you know Tailwind CSS, it's like some other way to basically write your CSS. However, it only works partially. You would need some kind of post CSS to basically also like transpile basically your CSS to all the standards. However, this also does not work in every case, so you have some limitations. In the end, we did write most of the components ourselves. Bootstrap did work for React, which was good. So we just used that with most of our own components. A big factor is, however, authentication. Nearly, I think, every modern authentication library will be problematic, especially because they check like browser agents and such. So they see, hey, you're using a browser agent from 2011. This can't be right. You're either a bot, a hacker, or I don't know, you're trying something that you shouldn't do. So they will just block you. And also most of the like OAuth redirect pages require like modern JavaScript features, which just basically crash their page. And so the OAuth flows won't work. Thus, like modern authentication won't be like doable in this kind of approach. However, you could write your own authentication, like basic username, password, and such things. And for our approach, we use the simple token-based approach, which is like refreshed every X hours. However, it's also an internet application, so it wasn't that big kind of a deal.
Yeah, and this is how it looks like. This is the Vössing Presents sidebar with a few groups and people selected. In the top row, you see two buttons, which is the search button for looking for other users or groups from the NIB to be implemented in your buddy list. And the other is the settings icon, where you can select whether or not you want to see the pictures of people or not, or have a very condensed list of just names. And this then is what those look like. You can extend to even nested groups, which you can also create within the UI. And you can have a very short listing of names without pictures if you need to have many names within the list and are not so much interested into the profile pictures. And to even extend what you can now do with a single person, it is like having the opportunity to right click on a person or to hover on the presence icon or the profile picture, and that then looks like this. So a right click on my name would bring up the options that we have configured, which is chat, video call, email, or remove from buddylist. And if you hover on my profile picture, you would see that it has a green ring around it, which means I am available in some way. And my present status from my registration, whether I work remotely or am in the office, does say I'm in the office. Let's Zoom is my Zoom status, which I can set inside of the Zoom client. And there again, you have these chat, video call, and email. Phone call is not yet supported by Zoom to be opened with a single URL. The other options are available with a zoom.us/launch/ some other details. So the groups context menus look a bit different. You can rename a group, you can expand all, collapse all, look for groups that are nested in a flat view or in a nested view, and you can add subgroups or add people to the group you clicked on. And the search dialog just has this simple interface of a search field where you can just enter your search term, and then you can just find from the nearly 800 users or 1,200 groups and add these to your buddy list however you like. Well, and that's it for this first part of our presentation. That was the Zoom presence sidebar project, which is in action, which is adopted very well. And we have been able to deploy the widget from the widget catalog by just a simple rule to every Notes user in the company. That's how those widgets were designed that day, back in time. And they appreciated to see the Zoom presence now in a similar experience that we had previously with the Sametime buddy list. To close this up as the first thing that we wanted to show you, and there is another one which should keep you staying in the call, but this first thing shows that you must not have ugly old web pages just because the browser is an old browser. You can have pretty good looking web experiences within the sidebar. And even the developer is pleased because he can develop in his preferred React language. And the developer convenience is kind of important for finding people who are willing to do these things. And if you force them to write 15-year-old JavaScript code, they probably may change the company. So yeah, here we are. And let's do something with AI. You cannot really have such a session without doing something with AI. And I would like to introduce you what we did with AI as the main element of the AI strategy that we have. And the first thing we did is we wanted to have an AI capability that can be integrated everywhere. So we came up with the idea of having an AI chatbot that can then be leveraged within apps maybe similar than what Microsoft currently does with Copilot. So Copilot is nearly everywhere, but why shouldn't Vössing AI be everywhere too? So also having a sidebar integration for an AI bot that allows you to do what typically AI bots do, answer questions with some context information from data and documents, and also having a large language model in the back that allows to have rich answers and good summarizations and stuff. And yeah, first of all, we had to create this Vössing AI experience. And so what we decided to do was to again take React and build a ChatGPT clone by ourselves. We could also have leveraged one of the ChatGPT clones available, but we thought that having full control about everything it does could be beneficial for what we want to do with it later. So we just built this ChatGPT clone as a React single page app being served from a Node.js server running on Docker. And also here there is a Postgres database that has some data like the threads and stuff as data that it needs to render a quick user interface with being rich on several informations. So, but we would not do AI when it needs big servers or NVIDIA graphics cards or what. To us, AI is commodity. There will be a service that you can pay for that allows you to have the AI capability that you want to have. And we decided to go for the OpenAI assistant. That allows a lot of beautiful things. For example, every AI assistant in the OpenAI platform allows to have a vector store where you can upload data in form of JSON or CSV or XML or you name it, or PDF and Excel and you name it. And we use this vector store and put some RAG data in. So we created a Domino app that is called the RAG Synchronizer app. And in this app, you can define sources of data that is then fetched on a scheduled basis and prepared for the vector store so that it offers an optimized way to hand this data over to the OpenAI assistant. And the data retrieval that we built works, for example, on connections wikis or on some other Domino databases or even on some web pages that we crawl. And so we took a lot of the Vössing knowledge from those systems and created a daily RAG upload schedule that allows the OpenAI assistant that you reach when you use the Vössing AI front end to answer questions based on the company knowledge so that you can ask, how the hell do I get a new monitor here at Vössing? And it will exactly tell you the process from our guidelines from the connections wiki where this is written down in. And I just took a screenshot of January usage statistics, which shows that we are a bit in a growing curve. You must not forget that this is a holidays month in addition, but it's like some 100 API requests a day, and that's kind of an okay, not so much overuse, but it is coming to be a daily help for many of the Vössing employees. So first of all, important to understand, we created this Vössing AI web experience based on OpenAI's technology from the Assistant API, leveraging data from Vössing systems as RAG data in the vector store in OpenAI. And the beauty is that if you do so, OpenAI promises if you give us money, we won't take your data. So we pay for having this account style that is not using to be trained in some way for new models. So we consider this data being secure enough for that kind of data that we place there. So no personal data in a specific way. It's just generic information, right? And there is one more block here in this block diagram that's Tavily. So if you use web search, you see this switch here over the text box. If you use web search, our backend just reaches out to Tavily, sends the web search request out there, then gets some web pages back and uses the result from the web to redefine the answer. So that's how we did the web search. Well, this is Vössing AI. And the next step was to think about how could now Vössing AI be active within the Notes client. And the goal was to have an embedded AI support so that Vössing AI appears within the Notes sidebar to improve daily work tasks within HCL Notes, which we use a lot. The whole business is based on Domino apps. So people are living in the Notes client, not only for mail, but more or less for everything they do with contracts, invoices, a personal work or whatever, you name it. So the requirements were to have an interactive AI chatbot, which we have, the Vössing AI chatbot, that provides an engaging and user-friendly experience, but within the Notes sidebar. And then we wanted to teach it to be aware what the current context of Notes is. So which document is opened or which view is open? What is the document about that is open? What is the view showing? On which documents are marked in the view? So to be able to be context aware was one of the questions that we had. Is this possible? Then to leverage the context to be utilized so that the chatbot responses are based on the document that you are just looking at without even telling the AI sidebar anything about it. It should just be context aware. Then to have prepared context rules. So if the form is memo, just use body and subject and sender or what. Tailored context means you can limit the amount of data that is sent from a notes form to the chatbot so that it does not have like a context pollution problem and can focus on what is really important. And the other thing is tailored prompts. Tailored prompts is an idea so that an app expert could think of prompts that are really useful for people, but probably they would not have the idea to ask that. So he can prepare tailored prompts that use the data from the current open document. And so just to click on it to fire the prompt, and the prompt can do magical things which only app experts can think about. Well, plan to implement is also one more thing, and that is the ability to use the answer of the bot to then re-inject it as the body of an answer to that mail or to the summarization field of that document, whatever it is. And we did not yet do this, but it's technically doable. It's just that we haven't done it yet. So now I asked Leonardo, could you please create this AI sidebar experience? And his first reaction was, yeah, that's impossible. And I won't fight with legacy developer stuff like that in the XULrunner environment. And that's why he came up with a different solution this time. Leonardo, would you point out?
Yeah. So the first idea we had, or Bernd had, he was like, hey, we did get present sidebar working. Couldn't you do that? And I was like, the thing is, the React app we wrote for the chat UI, so basically our ChatGPT clone, did leverage a lot of like third-party React components, different styling libraries and such, which just can't be transpiled to such a legacy way, so it can be actually displayed into the Notes sidebar. So this would mean we had to, or we would need to rewrite everything and make it like legacy compatible, which I didn't want to do, and neither any of my colleagues. But it was the only known way at that time. And we like searched for like how, okay, we were like, okay, we could get this working somehow, but how do we get the context? Do we know what does the user look at right now? Which document does he have open? In which view is he currently? So we did some research and we did find a project of one of your OpenNTF members. I don't remember his name. I already forgot it. I'm a bit bad with names, but it was called X Pages to Eclipse Toolkit, which allowed us that. So you could theoretically call or like read the context from inside the inks page. And we thought like, okay, if you can read the context, we can, like we've seen before, we can have like a data flow between a Nix page and like our embedded web app. So we could basically read the context and pass it to our web app. Easy, right? The thing was, at that time, we also transitioned from Notes 12 or version 12 to Notes 14. And when we did the switch in Notes 14, the toolkit didn't work anymore. So there's that. And we didn't want to bother trying to fixing it. So we did we did find another approach, which is retrospectively thought and way better approach and way more stable approach, and did save us a lot of pain and suffering, because you will see it in the next slides. So the second approach is basically you can actually write an Eclipse, I think it's called Rich Client Platform plugin, to basically extend any part of the Notes UI. So basically, the decision was easy. As the only known way that is currently possible, we did go for the Eclipse RCP plugin. So what was the solution? We did use, as I already say, the Eclipse RCP plugin style, which does mainly two things, or has like two things to do. So the one thing is we have to have some kind of chatbot UI, so it has to somehow render a chatbot UI into Notes. How? We didn't know, but we did find out. So you could basically use something called a web view, which is also just a browser embedding, to display a web page. For example, in Visual Studio Code, a lot of the extensions there also use web views to basically like for the GitHub Copilot, for example, to display like the chatbot interface and such. This can also all be done with web views, and you can also do it like in Notes, basically with this Eclipse plugin style. And the second more important thing was the data bridge. So basically the plugin serves as a kind of, I call it middleware, because it's not really in backend, so it does call in backend. But basically what it does is it reads the data, and it possibly could also write the data from Domino nodes. So at the beginning, there was like two UI options that we could consider. You can write native UI and you can use a web view. However, as we already have our like ChatGPT or ChatGPT-ish clone, we just went for that because it's just cost effective. Everything was set already. And we just like extended that app to be like, or basically that it can receive context and work with it. So however, web view, you might think, oh, web view sounds great. I can just embed my web page and it's done. Not entirely. So the default web view for Eclipse is Internet Explorer, which is from 2015. I mean, 4 years newer than XULrunner, but still pretty legacy. So you have, or you will run into the same issues. So we would have, if you would use this, we would have to basically like rewrite or chat UI anyway, which we didn't want to. At some point, we found out you could also use something called WebView 2, which is from Microsoft, and like it's in late Windows 10 and Windows 11 installs, comes as default, but you can also like package it into your plugin, but that's another story. So you basically can use this, or you can use Chromium binaries, which there are different countries that have like, I don't know how to tell this. They wrote like kind of adapters to use it inside like the Eclipse plugin. The two most known companies for that is ecro-chromium and JX Browser. However, they're like extremely costly, so they do require you to pay yearly licenses or like project-based licenses, enterprise licenses, and those are pretty expensive. I think the one is like 10K a year, and the other one is like 30K per project, which we didn't want to pay, so we just went for WebView 2. So about the data bridge. So the cool thing is you have like access to the Lotus Domino API. Everybody knows already if he already worked like in the Domino Designer Java path. So you could like open a session, open a database, load documents, write the documents. You can basically do what you already know how to do. And you could also theoretically work with Notes UI documents. However, they're pretty finicky to work with, so they didn't update always. So the context was sometimes older. They did not update, and there were some major issues with that. So we decided to work with server documents in the end. We will see on the next slides. So the context retrieval process actually grabs the server documents, extracts the context, and then basically sends this to our web app. But we will see the exact data flow in a minute. So there are basically two data flows. One is like sending data. So you can actually inject JavaScript into the web view. Because we are in a RCP plugin, we are not natively in a parent web page. So we can't use this window.post message schema you might think of. You have to do something different. And that's like, you can basically, in web views, you can inject JavaScript, which is pretty insane, but you can do it, and we will see it later. So we leverage this to basically inject our context into our web page. And you could also go the other way around. So you can basically send data to the Eclipse plugin. For that, you would need to do a browser function implementation. We didn't include how to do this in this presentation, but if you just like Google Eclipse plugin browser function, you will find like all the code snippets you need to actually realize this function. And we did not implement it yet, but it's planned to be implemented to basically like inject answers from the large language model back into like notes documents, like in the email or such. And yeah, for the context handling, we will look at this in the later slides. It's just basically we register a selection listener. So this tells us whenever the context changes. So if you like switch the document, or you are in a view and you select like another document or like multiple documents, we know it based on the selection listener we register, and then we can like gather the data, process it, and do some magic to make this all work. So the final architecture, so front end is like our modern web app that already did exist, running like into this WebView 2 from Microsoft. The middleware is basically our plugin, which does one thing or two things. It does host our web app and acts basically as a data bridge between nodes in our web app. And basically our backend in this sense is like the Domino server, like giving us the documents and like then getting the data. So in the picture, you can see the data flow a bit more detailed or a bit better explained. So we have the selection listener. If the selection changes, we can like process the selection. We get like, it's called document summaries. We like extract the URLs, then we fetch the documents. We do a lot of different processing to basically make the data compatible, but having a context large language model better understands. Then we generate the context, and if we have the context generator, we basically inject it into our web view. Thus, like our ChatGPT clone has like this context awareness and can then send it to our backend and like do everything else. All right, you might ask yourself, okay, Eclipse RCP plugin, this sounds kind of crazy and sounds kind of hard to do. How would I basically like display a browser, or how would I basically display like a browser website into the sidebar? And this you see right now is basically all you need actually. At the left side, which is one thing which you always need, is like an activator class for these kind of plugins. I think, but I'm not sure. If you write OSGI plugins, it's in like an similar way. So it's like just boilerplate code, which you need just to copy and paste. You can use like the start and stop method to basically like do some logging and such, or like additional preparation if you need to, but just copy and paste it. And on the right side, this is the more interesting part. So this is the class. In our case, I called it Sidebar, which does need to extend view part to be later basically displayed into the sidebar. Which has like, if you like extend view part, you have to override one method. It's called create part control, which gives you a composite, which is basically like the sidebar composite. So the parent is basically the sidebar, and you can then like add content to it. You could draw your own UI with it, but we just basically spawn a browser and then like just load a web page. This is all we do. So the first thing we do is like set part name. This is like the name displayed at the top of the application that is open in the sidebar. Then we say like, hey, the parent should take all the space available. This is done with these with the new grid layout 1 and true. And what we then need to do, which is pretty easy, we spawn a browser. So we say just, hey, new browser. We say it should be rendered into the parent. So we give it the composite. And we say, what kind of browser does it need to be? So if you do SVT none, this would be Internet Explorer. But you can also do SVT Edge, which tries to grab an WebView 2 installation, or if you packaged it with your Eclipse plugin, this would also work. Otherwise, it just defaults to like the Internet Explorer, but this would not be great in our case. And then in the next statement, we just say, hey, please fill up all the space you have. So we have like a full screen web app rendered in the sidebar. And the next 2 lines are just, hey, this is the URL I want you to display. In this case, example is just like localhost. And then we also say like, hey, JavaScript can be executed in this browser. Let's go. And everything, like this small code chunks, is everything you need to basically, display a website or a modern website, which actually can run modern JavaScript and everything, authentication, really everything without problems in the sidebar. So that's great.
I always thought building RCP plugins is kind of impossible or very, very hard work. This doesn't look like it is.
And the research part, how to get it work, is the hard work, I guess. The code at the end is not the hard work, but figuring it out how to do it is
there is a but. There is a but. Go ahead.
Yeah. All right. So this is the like a bit more abstracted code, which we do the selection listen and then process the selection just for you guys to maybe like do something similar. So the left side, we are right underneath the browser we just created. So we do one thing. So the first thing is we do display get default async exec. This does execute all the code that follows in like I think it's the UI thread, so it doesn't block your Notes client actually. Because if you don't do it, some methods or like the node session job, which we later use, do not work, so they crash, and it would actually block like your Nodes client. So if you like, as long as this code runs, you can't do anything in a Nodes client, and that would not be nice because some of the processing does take some time. So the next thing you see is like some insane method calling, which you actually have to research, which is the hard part, or you have to find out. So to get actually a selection listener, you have to call platform UI, get workbench, get active workbench window, get selection service, and then add a selection listener, which then is our own selection listener we have to implement. So we just give him a selection listener. which is basically a new eye selection listener. You also have to know that. And this class also has needs you to override the selection change event, which is basically the event you are interested in, because this is always fired when the selection changes. So in this part, you're like doing the stuff you need to do. In our case, we need to fetch the context. So at first we this is also async code, but don't worry. We check like if it's a structured selection, because if it's not a structured selection, we are not interested in it. And then we do some castings, and we basically check if like previous jobs or previous context fetching is still processing. This can happen because if you are in the view and you have like 100 documents selected, the data retrieval from nodes and such can take up some time. And if the selection changes and the process is still running, you just want to cancel it. So this is some template code to do this. So it tries to cancel basically the job. And the actual handling is done basically in the node session job, which does give you like a node session. So the session you are used to in Java. And what we do is basically we iterate in the for loop over the structured selection, which is basically, I think it was a list, I'm not sure though. And this is basically in a view, every structured selection is like a document then, or maybe not every time. If it's like a heading, it's not a valid selection, but it's still included. But yeah, it's either like an array or like an array with like only one document. And what we do is like we check if it's like a document summary. And if it's a document summary, we can basically, it has like, I think it has a name and like a URL, and we take the URL to basically resolve to the actual document. So it's a server document. So we load it, we do some heavy processing. We do also load some context-based things, but we will see this later in the UI, what I mean with this. And then we like do our further processing. So there's a lot more going on behind the scenes, but this is like the core code. You could like, do such things. So the right side at the top, you can see like how to actually emit a context, because we don't have like these windows, window.post message. You can basically inject any kind of JavaScript. So actually in our case, as we are using a React app, there's something called state. And at the bottom, we can see I do expose and setter for a state. So you can basically take data, and then this data is available in the React component to basically be interactive with it. So we do just like expose the function basically to the global window. And this allows us basically in the plugin to call this function. So if you see like set external context is exposed, it takes some data, which is of some kind. And the emit context, we just call this. So we have like the JSON structure as context. So we have the context as JSON, and we just put in the JSON into the set external context, and this is called, and this works fine. You could also set variables. You could do basically everything you want because it's JavaScript. And so that's really cool. Yeah. So
here's the but. Here's the but that I just mentioned. If the world would be as you would expect it, it would be great, but.
Yeah, so we did earlier say we did choose WebView 2, which sounded too good, didn't it? Because it was free and yay, it's modern and it should work. But however, we discovered, or by accident, as I was working remotely, that WebView 2 actually has DPI scaling issues when displayed inside of Notes, because it's a bug known at Microsoft for years. But it hasn't been fixed since. You might ask yourself, what is a DPA scaling issue? It's basically if you have like, or you're in Windows and you have like your monitor settings, and you can like choose like the zoom factor. Normally it's like 100%, but if you have like a 4K display, you might run 150% and such. So if it's not 100%, the funny thing is, if you have like the node sidebar like here, the actual context is somewhere rendered here. This is pretty annoying, so it basically makes the whole integration unusable.
But it's funny to watch users how to cope with it, because they always try to move the mouse to where the window appears, although the controls yet still are inside of the RCP frame. So
Yeah.
you would have to guess where to click, and that's really an annoying thing. So if your monitor is not set to 100% scaling, yeah, Edge Web View 2 has its issues. So we are still looking for improvement for this thing. And probably the solution could be money, but 30,000 a year just sounds a bit too much.
That's right.
But well, Leonardo, that was a journey. It wasn't done in a day. So I can assure that. But I really think the result is mind-blowing, because if you're in the Notes client and our Vössing AI sidebar plugin, this is not a mock-up, this is a real screenshot. And having this email open and just asking what's this mail about without doing anything else. So it already mentioned, look in the blue memo thing here down there, just above the type a message field. And it just says this mail is a quarantine report from Hornet Security for the mail address, blah, blah, blah. And you could now say, would you please answer in a business tone like, no, I don't want it. And it would just write the answer for you that you could just copy paste into your response within the Notes client email. And even more, if you click on this memo blue button here, it shows the context. And that looks like this. So the context here is what the RCP plugin sent to the web app for what you see in your Notes client. And we have done two things in addition. You could not only choose the attachments that are also uploaded to the OpenAI Assistant API so that it also runs on multimodal input, you can prepare tailored prompts. So like, yes, I agree, write an answer based on yes, I agree. And you can have this prompt here that the app expert has given so that you just pick as a user, but the prompt author has done a lot of try and error to find the best prompt that triggers the best answer. This is the tailored prompt thing. And the other one is that you can also tailor the context so that you can pick fields that are then handed over to the web app so that not every aspect of the document pollutes the context window, and so that you can pick which fields are now handed over as a JSON string to the AI as an input for the prompt. And yeah, with this, we are through the slides. So what we see here is a Notes app that is working with purchase requests. And these purchase requests are the purchases that we do, right? And for example, this purchase here is already ordered. And look here, it just recognized that this is a purchase request, which has three attachments. And I prepared some inputs here, some tailored prompts. So please tell me about the current state of the ordering. And then it writes down this prompt here, and I can just fire the prompt. And then it is possible to see what the AI assistant now makes from what the input was. And as always, it takes some time for the assistant to build the answer. But then it will just recognize that this is a purchase request and look for the articles that are in there. And this first article is a ProDesk 600, whatever, and the state is ordered. It is already delivered. The price was this, and this is an article that replaces another article that has been sent back to the leasing company, and it was ordered in 29th January, and the status all done was put on it on 7th of February. Let's pick the other one. How would those prices that we have paid rate for what the internet says? And now see, I picked some fields from the document here and can put it into the tailored prompt, doing now a web search for what does this thing cost elsewhere when we pay 781 euros. Is this a good price or not? Here you can see what we fire up to the external web search engine, and now formulating the answer, having this web content read from the internet. And now, okay, what happens now is kind of clear, but to be able to have this predefined prompt is a very good thing. So yeah, I think there are some cheaper options to buy this thing, but it just shows how we can work with those predefined prompts here. So, and now time is open for questions.
Thanks, Bernd. Actually, can you go back to your notes client because it's going to illustrate my first question. That's some really interesting stuff. Boy, my brain has just been churning since you've been on this. So I had to smile to myself because when you first described the notion of taking the context of whatever the current document or current view was, it started making me think about performance. And clearly, as we can see here, you've got more performance when the question is being asked. But my thought was, and you illustrate this perfectly in your notes client, you're typical of many notes users who have multiple tabs open at the top of their screen. And so my first thought when you described it was you were looking at all of those tabs. So I just wanted to clarify, you're really only looking at whatever the current tab is when you're trying to collect the context. Is that correct?
It is the current view or the current document that is looked at. So I
Right.
can also place some check marks in here, and then those 3 documents are with all their attachments available within my context-aware web app in the sidebar. So I
And so
can have a collection of many or a single document that delivers its content over here that way that you have just seen.
And how did you find the performance for collecting the context when you have multiple documents selected?
Well, if I go that way, it takes a while.
Yeah. Okay.
For sure.
Interesting. Very interesting. Okay. So Jesse asked a question. This seems like the sort of thing that would spark your imagination for other ideas. Do you have anything in mind for it'd be nice to have a reason to implement this one day? What's your, I have to imagine you've got a wish list.
So, well, we had those 2 wishes. The one was the present sidebar, which shows up like Leonardo has just presented. If I open mine, you see too many information. And the second was to having this Vössing AI. We are aware that for HCL, the Eclipse Notes client may not be the long-term strategy, but we didn't want to wait some other 10 years for the new strategy to be announced. So what we decided to do was to act now in what we have now. And if this will pass away in 5 years because they prefer to just only offer Nomad and no longer the Eclipse-based Notes client, so be it. But we did not yet think about much more opportunities to use this sidebar thing, although it for sure opens up capabilities that you could use for a lot of. So now here is the 73 purchase requests with 154 attachments that I could now pick. So it took a
Awesome.
while, but well, it works at least, right?
Yeah.
So
But we
we
also
could
have to
push,
say, yeah,
yeah.
but Bernd's machine is pretty slow, so on a fast device, it does work better.
Interesting. And thinking about your first presentation with the Zoom presence awareness and just the challenges from a technical standpoint of making that fit into the Notes client, it really makes me think that the two notions are the same. And you really said this, that modern tools give you the ability to do all of the things that you want to do. The real challenge was figuring out how to fit it into the Notes client. So whether it's Nomad or something else, all of the application specific bits and pieces will still work. It's more a matter of making that fit into the Notes sidebar.
And that's why we had the idea of presenting the two ways that we found. So first was build React web app in modern style, transpile with dead target with the white plugin legacy, or build an RCP Eclipse plugin that leverages Edge Web View to create a very modern web experience within the Notes client sidebar. And those two opportunities should actually help everybody. It's not hard. So if you know what to do, it's no longer that hard. First of all, when you come to the idea to do it, it may be just this is impossible thought. But at the end, we came up with no, it's possible even in two ways. So and either you have a more simple web page that you could use, then use the other notion of having this down transpiled simple web app thing and go with it. Just have the XULrunner display it. Or you have the need for a richer web experience or modern authentication, which you did not see, but this web page used Microsoft SSO in the background to authenticate the user, and it all works pretty unseeable fine, right? And this cannot be done within XULrunner. So if you need something with security and authentication and stuff, the other solution is the one that you could use. And well, I think it is time for us as Notes users and Notes developers to recognize that we do not have to wait for HCL to fix things. We can just use what is there and do pretty exciting things anyway.
Absolutely. We've got another one here. It says, I like the considerations and architectural decisions you made to overcome certain challenges, and the resulting approach looks like an interesting general approach, at least for a Note standard client. Nomad seems to be out of scope. Any plans to productize this or potentially open source?
Well, we are building software for the company. We don't have a software vendor style organization. We don't have services, support, legal contracts, all this we don't have. So I would not disagree to share what we created in terms of code, but I would not like to care for the code or something. So we can for sure look after doing a one-time shot of sharing this, but I don't want to have efforts in caring for what is out there then. So if there is somebody wanting to help us with this, I wouldn't disagree to share, but I have no time to care.
Well said. Okay, that's what we've got for questions. I'll make one last request. We've got a few more minutes here. If anybody has anything else they'd like to add. When you were talking about looking for the different options for the AI plugin, there was comment that Karsten was our community friend.
Oh yes, I did want to mention that. It was Karsten Lehmann. We spoke about this solution that he had, and he told he would not put his hands back on it for making it work in Notes 14. So yeah, that was gone the opportunity that we first thought. But well, it turned out that the way we did it wasn't the bad way to do it. So it's okay. And I think if we now dig deeper into what to do with the response, so offer response actions, like take this as the answer to the open mail. just by a click of a button, you get this new mail answer, body filled, subject filled, and then you could just, do the 2 changes and hit send. So you could, given you have, for example, a supporter workplace that receives questions from customers by email, and given you have used the AI assistant solution or something similar, then your knowledge base could already be part of the RAG data.
Yep.
So if it is, you could craft an answer to that question by leveraging the RAG data of the knowledge base and just answer this with a few clicks. So even though Notes would not know that this is an AI part, the web integration into the Notes client with the awareness of the context would help you to answer that email within a few seconds without even going to research in the knowledge base and just getting the answer prepared by the bot. So this is what these things could do. And I think it's, maybe like the title says, it's innovative things, isn't it?
Yes. I like, it's just sparking imagination, right? So you've invested the time and then come and share your ideas, which trigger other ideas for other people. So very much thank you guys for taking the time and sharing what you've been working on. This was really very interesting. We don't have any other questions, so we'll say thank you very much. Oh, okay.
Serdar, nice to hear
Yeah,
from you.
Serdar, you gotta be a little more clear there, my friend. But he says, how is your dev environment?
Leonardo, a few words on the dev environment?
What is our dev environment? Good
GitHub
question.
Copilot, by the way.
Ah, yeah, debatable. Yeah, I don't know. Most of us run, if you do modern like web kind of programming, we do use Visual Studio Code at most times, and then basically building Docker files, then hosting it on our Docker service, and
So
it's
he
basically
clarified.
our
He
dev
says,
environment.
how do you manage to work on client plugin environment without going mad? Okay, smarty pants.
Okay, that's a funny mention. Yeah,
Yeah.
going mad is likely in this in this topics.
I can
How did
confirm,
you
yeah.
handle reader access to fill the rack, Tom?
Yes.
Maybe we can go deeper on this in a one-on-one talk. We have this RAG extractor that uses an agent that extracts, and be it for the connections content, it uses a registered user in connections that has access to those wikis. And for the notes data, it runs with signer permissions in the ACL of the Domino database where it fetches the information from. So I could point this out in deeper detail, but Tom, maybe we can look at it in a one-on-one session. Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity to present here. And
Absolutely.
hopefully you find this as us interesting. And
All
we
right.
love Domino and we love Notes. So let's continue the journey.
Thanks everyone for joining today, and we will see you next time.